Yes,
Mm.
it is stable at the moment. We only can imagine what will or could happen tonight. I issued a warning on social media, dear Kenosha, if you're thinking about rioting tonight, make sure that the person you chase does not have a rifle or a weapon to defend himself with, because if that's the case, history has now proven it may not end well for you. And that is exactly what
Mm.
happened in this case. Kyle Rittenhouse defended
Yeah.
himself. He was smacked on the head with a skateboard. Mark, he was thrown to the ground. Those shots were fired with him looking up from the ground, chased by multiple people who would have no doubt either seriously maimed or killed him that night. And he defended himself, and as such, the jury in this case found that he acted in self-defense and he was acquitted.
The what is disturbing about this, and I agree with you on that. I don't think anyone, if you're on the ground and someone's walloping a skateboard into your head, you're under no obligation to lie back there and take it on the assumption that walloping you with the skateboard is the beginning and end of his plans for you. But this was clearly a politically motivated prosecution. They basically wanted to teach this guy a lesson that Antifa and BLM are the left's enforcers on the streets of America, and you don't go up against them, and you don't take them out. If it's a civil war, it's going to be a one-sided civil war. They get people like Kevin Spacey and Kamala Harris staffers paying their bail when they get picked up by the cops, and they get let out and they're never charged. Whereas this guy, he's on the other side, he's got no celebrities itching to bail him out, and they want to make an example of him.
And yes, and they wanted to make an example of him. There was another case where two homeowners came out. They lived in a gated community. BLM protesters violated and were trespassing and threatening property destruction. These two homeowners came out and they were armed, and the homeowners ended up being arrested. So exactly right. It's the same message we get from the left all the time. Now, Mark, I've come under a little bit of attack from a view that, because I also question Kyle Rittenhouse on this. You're 17 years old, for goodness sake. I can't imagine my mom, when I was 17, saying, "Oh, son, that's a great idea. You're 17. Just go out and join the riot and try to protect everyone." He's 17 years old, for goodness sakes. He should have been home doing his homework. That said, he had every right to defend himself.
No, I agree with you that, and I think. Well, my view, I'm not a particular. I support the Second Amendment, the right to gun ownership that Americans enjoy and most other Western nations no longer do. But I'm not particularly into guns. But last summer in America, simply because all kinds of small towns were suddenly dangerous, small Vermont and New Hampshire towns suddenly had menacing homeless encampments and all the rest of it, I started driving around with a Glock in my glove box, not because I wanted to, but just because it's dangerous, and the police are doing an awful lot of just standing around in this situation while their cities burn.
Yeah, or they're under threat of being defunded from the left, who seems to think that you can just send social workers out to do the job of police in intervening in violent disputes or deadly disputes, which absolutely makes no sense whatsoever. We watched American cities burn under the leadership of leftist governors who elected not to send in law enforcement, who elected to let the likes of Antifa and Black Lives Matter protesters have the run of the day, destroy not only federal government buildings, but vandalize local businesses. Arson was all over these American cities like Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington, and yes, Kenosha. While governors in these are what we call blue states here in America. They are run by Democrats and liberals, while the governors just sat on their hands, almost like Emperor Nero, and just, we'll just do something else while our cities burn right underneath our noses. It was unconscionable.
What do you think? There's a difference, I think, between the American left, the Democrat Party, and those in other parts of the West. Monsieur Macron in France, who's certainly not, my preferred taste in politicians, but they attempted to do the George Floyd thing over there. And he said on, I think, the second or third night, he stood up, he said, we are not going to change the name of a single street, and we are not going to take down a single statue because they're all part of the glorious history of France. And the whole problem went away. Here, in the case of not just Kyle Rittenhouse, but beyond that, the American left, the Democrat, mainstream figures in the Democrat Party, like Nancy Pelosi, seem to be encouraging the torching of American citizens.
The American left, unlike the left, I'm so glad you brought that up, in other Western nations, the American left despises their own country. Other leftists may take issue with particular issues, and they may come to the street on an issue-oriented basis, but they love their countries and they are patriotic in their own countries. The American left, unlike any of these other nations, doesn't like their own country. They hate the country they're living in, and they're too cowardly to go move somewhere else. So we're stuck with them here. They want to loot. They want to commit arson. They want to destroy the cities that they live in. And then they want to come to the federal government and taxpayers and ask for money so that they can try to rebuild the very cities that they've destroyed. It makes zero sense.
While you're on that subject, James, years ago I had a conversation with Kevin Rudd, the Labour Prime Minister of Australia, and he was very anxious to assure me as I entered the room. He said, I'm part of the pro-American left. And I said, crikey, I don't think in America they have a pro-American left, but they do in Australia. It's a very interesting distinction, that.
Exactly right.
Do you think Kyle Rittenhouse is out of this now, or are they? Because the other thing is you've got all these different levels of jurisdiction. You know, in most countries, the criminal courts belong to one level of government, whether it's at the national or the provincial level. In America, they're all saying, OK, well, now this trial has been held in Kenosha. Now the feds are going to try him all over again. The old double jeopardy, triple jeopardy will find a different level of government to take him to court until his life is totally ruined.
Normally, Mark, in a verdict like this, where all the charges have been found in favor of the defendant, I would say no, there wouldn't be an attempt. But this federal government, our Department of Justice, is under the direction of a gentleman named Merrick Garland, who is, despite what we were told when they were trying to nominate him to the Supreme Court, there were stories about what a moderate he was. He is a radical leftist. So if he wants to appease the left, one of the things he can certainly do is run back and say, well, we're going to bring Mr. Rittenhouse up on civil rights charges because the civil rights of the men who were killed while trying to kill him were violated. And that's certainly an option. It would be unwise because we are approaching a midterm election year where every single member of the House of Representatives in our country is up for election. Joe Biden's numbers are in the toilet and circling as low as they can get. There is no reason or rhyme for Democrats to believe that they will be successful in the midterm elections. And prosecuting this Kyle Rittenhouse once again might only be a move that would hurt them even further in the eyes of the electorate.
Well, that's an interesting political calculation. Our mutual friend Conrad Black, when he attracted the attention of the Department of Justice, I told him to climb in the back of my pickup truck. I'd throw a tarp over him, drive him across the Canadian border and over to Newfoundland and get a ferry to the Turks and Caicos Islands and a jet to freedom. And I now make that offer more generally to anyone because I didn't realize quite as I did by then, that the whole dirty, stinking, rotten, corrupt federal Department of Justice needs a complete top to toe overhaul.